How can a woman be pregnant, when she has never been with a man? That was the question that would soon shake one of the most powerful homes in South Korea. But on the sidewalk, one woman was struggling. Her name was Naomi Carter. Naomi was a beautiful black American woman in her late 20s. She was tall, graceful, and strong. Her skin glowed softly under the morning sun, and her long curly hair bounced as she tried to keep running. But today was different. Her breathing was heavy. Her legs felt weak. Her heart pounded like a drum. Still, Naomi kept running. She had learned long ago that running helped clear her mind. Running helped her forget pain. 3 months earlier, Naomi had arrived in South Korea from the United States. She had come with hope. But life had not been kind to her since then. She had lost her job. She had lost the small apartment she was renting. And worst of all, she had discovered something dark about the company she once trusted. A truth that powerful people wanted to hide. Now Naomi was alone in a foreign country, trying to survive. Running every morning was the only moment she felt free. But today, her body was failing her. Her vision began to blur. The street started spinning slowly around her. Just a little more, Naomi whispered to herself. She took 2 more steps. Then everything went black. Her body collapsed onto the sidewalk. Across the street, a black luxury car slowed down. Inside the car sat one of the most powerful men in South Korea. His name was Kwon Jae-hyun. Jae-hyun was a billionaire businessman known for his intelligence, discipline, and cold personality. People feared him. Employees respected him. Competitors avoided him. His companies controlled technology, real estate, and medical research across Asia. But despite his success, Jae-hyun lived a very private life. No wife. No children. No close friends. Only work. The car stopped as Jae-hyun noticed something unusual. A woman lying on the sidewalk. His driver looked through the mirror. "Sir, should we keep going?" the driver asked carefully. Jae-hyun didn't answer immediately. His sharp eyes studied the woman outside. Her clothes were simple. Her running shoes were worn. But even unconscious, she looked strong and dignified. Something about her felt different. Jae-hyun slowly opened the car door. The driver looked shocked. In the many years he had worked for the billionaire, Jae-hyun almost never stopped for strangers. But today he did. Jae-hyun stepped out and walked toward Naomi. He knelt beside her. Her breathing was weak but steady. Her face looked pale. Jae-hyun frowned slightly. "She's exhausted," he said quietly. The driver hurried over. "Should I call an ambulance, sir?" Jae-hyun looked around the quiet street. If reporters saw a woman collapsing near him, rumors would spread quickly. He stood up. "No," he said calmly. "Take her to the mansion." The driver blinked in surprise. "The mansion, sir?" "Yes." Jae-hyun's voice was firm. "She needs care." Within minutes, Naomi was gently lifted into the back seat of the luxury car. Her head rested softly against the seat as the car began moving toward the billionaire's massive estate. She had no idea where she was going. About 20 minutes later, the car stopped in front of a gigantic iron gate. The gate slowly opened. Behind it stood one of the most famous private mansions in Seoul. The Kwon Estate. The property looked like something from a movie. Tall trees lined the long driveway. Fountains sparkled under the morning light. Security guards stood watch at every corner. The mansion itself was enormous. White marble walls. Huge glass windows. More than 100 workers lived and worked inside the estate. Chefs. Housekeepers. Gardeners. Security staff. Personal assistants. Everything in the mansion ran perfectly like a small kingdom. And the king of that kingdom was Kwon Jae-hyun. When the car stopped, several staff members rushed forward. They were shocked when they saw the unconscious woman in the back seat. "Who is she?" one maid whispered. "Why did the boss bring her here? I've never seen him do this before." The whispers spread quickly. But no one dared question Jae-hyun directly. He walked past them calmly. "Take her to the guest medical room," he ordered. "Yes, sir," the staff replied quickly. Naomi was carefully carried inside the mansion. The inside was even more luxurious than the outside. Beautiful paintings decorated the walls. For someone like Naomi, who had recently been struggling just to afford food, the place looked like another world to her. She was taken to a quiet medical room prepared for emergencies. A private doctor who worked for the Kwon family arrived shortly after. Jae-hyun stood silently near the window as the doctor examined Naomi. Minutes passed. Finally, the doctor spoke. "She is extremely exhausted," he said. "She has not been eating well." Jae-hyun's expression remained calm. "Will she recover?" "Yes," the doctor replied. "She only needs rest." Jae-hyun nodded. "Make sure she receives proper care." The doctor hesitated for a moment. Then he asked a careful question. "Sir, may I ask who she is?" Jae-hyun looked at Naomi for a moment. Then he said quietly, "A guest." 2 hours later, Naomi slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was a white ceiling. Soft sunlight entered through large windows. The room smelled clean and peaceful. She sat up suddenly. "Where am I?" A maid standing nearby smiled politely. "You are safe, miss." Naomi looked confused. "This is the residence of Mr. Kwon." "Mr. Kwon?" "Yes," the maid said gently. "Kwon Jae-hyun." Naomi froze. Even she had heard that name before. One of the most powerful men in the country. "What am I doing here?" she asked nervously. "You collapsed while jogging," the maid explained. "Our boss brought you here." Naomi stared in disbelief. "A billionaire brought me here?" "Yes." The maid nodded. Naomi looked down at her hands. Her mind was racing with questions. Why would a powerful man like that help a stranger? What did he want? And why did she feel like her life had just stepped onto a very dangerous path? Outside the room, Jae-hyun stood silently in the hallway. He had heard that Naomi had woken up. For a brief moment, his cold expression softened. But only slightly. Because deep inside his mind, he already knew something Naomi did not. Something that would soon change everything. And the truth was far more shocking than anyone could imagine. Naomi sat quietly on the soft white bed, trying to understand what had just happened. Only a few hours ago, she had been running alone on a quiet street, worried about how she would survive another day in Seoul. Now she was inside one of the richest homes in the entire country. It felt unreal. The maid standing beside her handed her a glass of warm water. "Please drink slowly," the maid said kindly. Naomi accepted it. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but inside, her mind was full of questions. She slowly looked around the room. The guest medical room was bigger than her entire apartment back in America. The bed was large and comfortable. Even the air smelled expensive. Naomi felt small in a place like this. People like her did not belong in places like this. She finished the water and stood up carefully. I should leave," Naomi said. The maid looked surprised. "Leave?" "Yes," Naomi replied. "I don't want to cause trouble for your boss." The maid smiled politely. "Our boss said you should rest." Naomi shook her head. "I've already caused enough trouble. But before she could move toward the door, another voice spoke calmly from the hallway. "You are not causing any trouble." Naomi turned. Standing in the doorway was Kwon Jae-hyun. For a moment, the room became completely silent. Naomi had seen pictures of him before in news articles, but seeing him in person felt different. He was tall and composed. His black suit was perfectly fitted. His expression was calm and serious. His eyes were sharp, like someone who noticed everything. And yet, something about him felt distant. Like a man who had built strong walls around his heart. Naomi immediately felt nervous. "Mr. Kwon," she said politely. Jae-hyun stepped inside the room. "You collapsed earlier," he said calmly. "Yes. I'm sorry about that." "You don't need to apologize." Naomi hesitated. "I really appreciate your help, but I should go now." Jae-hyun studied her face quietly. "You have nowhere to go." Naomi froze. Her eyes widened slightly. How do you know that?" Jae-hyun did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked slowly toward the window. "I had my staff check your condition while you were unconscious," he said. "They also looked into your situation." Naomi's chest tightened. "So you investigated me?" Jae-hyun turned toward her. "I needed to know if you were safe to stay here." Naomi looked down. She felt embarrassed. It was true. She had been struggling. Her savings were almost gone. Her job had disappeared after the company she worked for suddenly shut down. And finding new work in a foreign country had been very difficult. Jae-hyun spoke again. "You can stay here for now." Naomi looked up quickly. "What?" "You need rest. Proper food. Stability." "I can't stay in a billionaire's house," Naomi said quickly. "You can," he replied calmly. "And you will." Naomi stared at him. Why? It was a simple question. But the answer did not come easily. Jae-hyun remained silent for a few seconds. Then he said, "Because I decided so." That answer confused Naomi even more. But something in his voice told her the conversation was already over. Later that afternoon, Naomi was given a simple guest room inside the mansion. 2 maids helped bring her clean clothes. A warm meal was placed on a large table near the window. For the first time in many days, Naomi ate a proper meal. Rice. Soup. Fresh vegetables. Grilled fish. She almost cried while eating. Not because of the food, but because of the kindness she had not expected. Still, something about the mansion felt strange. Very strange. After finishing her meal, Naomi decided to explore a little. She walked slowly through the long hallways. Every corner of the mansion looked perfect. Beautiful artwork. Large windows showing peaceful gardens. Expensive decorations everywhere. But as Naomi walked, she began to notice something else. People were watching her. The staff. Maids whispered when she passed. Security guards looked at her carefully. Even the gardeners stopped working for a moment to stare. Naomi pretended not to notice, but she could hear them. Who is she? Why did the boss bring her here? She's not Korean. Is she his girlfriend? That's impossible. Their whispers followed her everywhere. Naomi felt uncomfortable. She had always been strong, but being judged by strangers still hurt. She continued walking until she reached a large glass door that led to the mansion's garden. Outside, the garden looked like a small park. Green trees. Beautiful flowers. A quiet pond with fish swimming peacefully. Naomi stepped outside and took a deep breath. Fresh air filled her lungs. For a moment, the stress in her heart felt lighter. She walked slowly along the stone path. But she didn't realize someone was watching her from the second-floor balcony. It was Jae-hyun. He stood silently with his hands behind his back. His eyes followed Naomi as she walked through the garden. One of his assistants stood nearby. "Sir," the assistant said carefully. "The staff are talking." Jae-hyun did not look away from the garden. "About the woman?" "Yes. They are curious why she is here." Jae-hyun finally turned away. "They will mind their duties." "Yes, sir." The assistant hesitated. Then asked another question. "Sir, are you certain about this?" Jae-hyun's expression became serious. "I am." The assistant nodded respectfully. But even he did not fully understand the reason behind his boss's decision. Back in the garden, Naomi sat beside the pond. Fish moved slowly beneath the surface. For the first time since arriving in Seoul, Naomi felt a small moment of peace. But deep inside her heart, something still felt wrong. Why had a powerful billionaire helped her? Why had he offered her a place to stay without asking anything in return? Nothing in life was ever that simple. Naomi had learned that lesson many times before. She looked at the water quietly. "Something about this place feels strange," she whispered to herself. What Naomi didn't know was that the strange feeling in her heart was not imagination. Because inside that mansion, secrets were already growing. The first few days inside the Kwon mansion passed quietly. Naomi tried her best to stay out of everyone's way. She woke up early every morning. She helped the maids clean small areas of the house even though they told her she didn't need to. She walked through the gardens and spent time reading books from the mansion's large library. But even with all the comfort around her, Naomi never forgot something important. She was still a stranger in this place. And everyone knew it. Whenever she walked through the hallways, the whispers followed her. Some of the staff were polite. But others looked at her with suspicion. Why is she still here? One maid whispered in the kitchen. The boss never lets strangers stay. Another replied quietly, maybe she's special to him. A third maid scoffed. Special? She looks like someone who came from the streets. Naomi pretended not to hear them. But their words still hurt. She kept reminding herself that she would leave soon. As soon as she found a job and a place to stay, she would thank Mr. Kwon and disappear from his world forever. That was her plan. One morning, Naomi woke up feeling strange. Her body felt heavier than usual. Her head was spinning slightly. She sat up slowly on the bed and rubbed her forehead. "Maybe I didn't sleep well," she murmured. She walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. But the moment she smelled the breakfast food coming from downstairs, something unexpected happened. Her stomach turned. A strong wave of nausea hit her suddenly. She rushed to the sink and held the edge tightly. "What is wrong with me?" she whispered. After a few minutes, the feeling slowly passed. Naomi took a deep breath. "It's probably just stress," she told herself. Over the next few days, the strange symptoms continued. Naomi felt tired all the time. Even simple tasks made her feel exhausted. Some mornings she woke up dizzy. Other times she felt sudden nausea again. At first, she ignored it. But soon, the maids began to notice. One afternoon in the dining hall, Naomi suddenly pushed her food away. "I'm sorry. I can't eat anymore," she said weakly. A maid looked concerned. "Miss Naomi, you have barely eaten anything today." "I'm just not hungry." But her pale face told a different story. The maid whispered to another worker. "Maybe she's sick." Within hours, the rumor spread across the mansion. And as always, rumors inside the mansion traveled very fast. Later that evening, Naomi was walking through the hallway when the dizziness suddenly returned. Her vision blurred slightly. She grabbed the wall for support. A nearby housekeeper rushed over. "Miss Naomi." "I'm fine," Naomi insisted quickly. But she clearly wasn't. The housekeeper looked worried. "I think we should call the doctor." "No, that's not necessary," Naomi replied. But at that moment, another voice spoke from behind them. "Yes, it is." Naomi turned slowly. Standing there was Kwon Jae-hyun. His expression was calm, but his sharp eyes noticed everything. "You look unwell," he said. "It's nothing," Naomi replied quickly. But Jae-hyun didn't seem convinced. He turned to the housekeeper. "Call the doctor." "Yes, sir." Naomi sighed quietly. "There's really no need for that." Jae-hyun looked at her seriously. "In my house, guests receive proper care." Naomi had no argument for that. So she remained silent. An hour later, the private doctor arrived once again. Naomi sat on a chair while the doctor carefully examined her. He checked her temperature. He asked several questions. "How long have you been feeling tired?" "About a week," Naomi answered. "Any dizziness?" "Yes." "Nausea?" Naomi hesitated. "Yes." The doctor nodded slowly. He wrote something down on his tablet. Then he looked at Naomi thoughtfully. "I would like to run a few tests," he said. "What kind of tests?" Naomi asked. "Just routine checks." Naomi agreed. The tests did not take long. But the waiting that followed felt endless. Jae-hyun stood quietly near the window while Naomi sat nervously in the chair. Neither of them spoke. Finally, the doctor looked at the results. His expression changed. He looked surprised. Very surprised. "Doctor?" Naomi asked nervously. The doctor looked at her again. Then at the screen. Then back at her. There was silence in the room for several seconds. Then, he spoke. "Miss Naomi." "Yes." "There is something you should know." Naomi's heart began beating faster. "What is it?" The doctor took a slow breath. "According to these results, you are pregnant." Naomi stared at him. For a moment, she thought she had heard wrong. "What?" The doctor spoke carefully. "You are pregnant." Naomi shook her head immediately. "No." Her voice was firm. "That's impossible." The doctor frowned slightly. "The test results are very clear." "No," Naomi repeated. "That can't be right." Her breathing became faster. "There must be a mistake." She looked directly at the doctor. "I have not been with anyone." The doctor blinked. "Are you certain?" "Yes." Naomi stood up suddenly. "I have not been intimate with anyone for years." The doctor looked confused. He checked the results again. But the answer was the same. He slowly turned toward Jae-hyun. But the billionaire's reaction was strange. Naomi noticed this immediately. Her eyes moved toward him. "Mr. Kwon, did you hear what he said?" "Yes," Jae-hyun replied quietly. "And you're not surprised?" Naomi asked. Jae-hyun didn't answer immediately. His silence filled the room with tension. Naomi's heart started beating faster again. Something about this situation felt very wrong. The doctor finally spoke again. "There is no mistake in the test." Naomi shook her head again. "I'm telling you that's impossible." Her voice trembled now. Fear slowly crept into her chest. "How can I be pregnant, when I've never been with anyone?" No one in the room had an answer. At least, not yet. But outside the room, the mansion staff were already whispering again. The shocking news had begun spreading. The American woman is pregnant. What? Yes. The doctor confirmed it. But how? Who knows? Maybe the boss. No, that can't be. Whispers filled the mansion like wildfire. And inside the room, Naomi stood frozen, trying to understand something that made no sense. But deep down, a terrible question had begun forming in her mind. A question she was almost afraid to ask. Because if the answer was true, then something dark had happened inside this mansion. Something she did not remember. Something someone might be hiding. And the truth behind her impossible pregnancy was only just beginning to reveal itself. The news spread across the Kwan mansion faster than a storm. By the next morning, almost everyone working in the estate had heard the same shocking words. The American woman is pregnant. But the question that followed the rumor made it even more disturbing. How can she be pregnant if she says she has never been with a man? Inside the mansion's large kitchen, several maids whispered quietly while preparing breakfast. I don't believe her, one maid said, shaking her head. Women don't just become pregnant for no reason. Another maid looked nervous. But the doctor said she was telling the truth. A third maid scoffed. Then how do you explain it? No one had an answer. And when people cannot explain something, they often choose the easiest answer. Blame. Soon the whispers turned into suspicion. And the suspicion slowly turned into hostility. Naomi could feel the change immediately. When she walked into the dining room that morning, the staff suddenly became quiet. Several people avoided looking at her. Others stared openly. It was no longer curiosity in their eyes. It was judgment. Naomi sat down slowly and tried to eat her breakfast. But the tension in the room made every bite feel heavy. Two maids stood near the doorway whispering to each other. Naomi could hear them clearly. She said she's never been with anyone. That's ridiculous. Maybe she's lying so the boss won't throw her out. The other maid nodded. She probably thinks having a baby will make him responsible for her. Naomi's hands tightened around her spoon. Her chest felt heavy. She wanted to stand up and shout the truth. But what truth could she even say? Even she didn't understand what was happening to her body. So instead, she quietly stood up and left the room. Behind her, the whispers continued. Later that afternoon, Naomi walked through the mansion's long hallway, trying to clear her mind. Everywhere she went, the staff looked at her differently. Some people pitied her. Others clearly did not trust her. And it hurts. She placed a hand gently on her stomach. Her voice was barely a whisper. How is this possible? She tried to remember everything that had happened since arriving in Seoul. But nothing explained the doctor's words. She had not been intimate with anyone. She had not even gone on a date since arriving in Korea. So how could she be pregnant? The question kept repeating inside her mind. Over and over again. Until another thought slowly began forming. What if someone had done something to her? Naomi immediately shook her head. No, that can't be right. But the thought refused to disappear. Instead, it grew stronger. Because there was one thing she could not ignore. Everything strange in her life had started after she entered this mansion. Naomi's eyes slowly lifted toward the massive house. Its white walls looked peaceful from the outside. But suddenly, it no longer felt like a safe place. It felt like a place hiding secrets. At that moment, two housemaids walked past the garden path. They did not realize Naomi was sitting nearby behind a tree. One maid spoke quietly. I heard the doctor arguing with one of the assistants yesterday. The other maid looked curious. About what? About the test results. What did he say? The first maid lowered her voice. I don't know exactly. But I heard him say the situation didn't make sense. Naomi's heart started beating faster. She leaned slightly closer, trying to hear more. But the boss told him to stop asking questions. The maid continued. The second maid looked shocked. Really? Yes. That's strange. The first maid nodded nervously. Very strange. They walked away slowly, leaving Naomi frozen in place. Her mind was racing. Why would Jae-hyun stop the doctor from asking questions? Why did he look so calm when he heard she was pregnant? Why did it feel like he already knew something? Naomi stood up slowly. Her heart was pounding now. A terrible realization was growing inside her. Maybe this pregnancy was not an accident. Maybe it was not natural at all. Maybe someone had planned it. And the only person powerful enough to hide something like that inside this mansion was the man who owned it. Kwon Jae-hyun. At that same moment, inside the mansion's private office, Jae-hyun stood beside a large window. His assistant stood behind him nervously. Sir, the staff are talking more about the woman. Jae-hyun remained silent. They are starting to question how she became pregnant. Still, Jae-hyun did not respond. The assistant hesitated before speaking again. Should we explain something to them? Jae-hyun slowly turned his head. His expression was calm. But his eyes looked cold. No. The assistant swallowed nervously. But sir, if the rumors continue, they will stop, Jae-hyun interrupted. His voice was firm. Then he looked back out the window toward the garden. From the second floor, he could see Naomi standing near the pond. She looked small compared to the enormous estate around her. But something about her presence had already begun changing everything inside the mansion. Jae-hyun's voice became quieter. She will discover the truth eventually. The assistant frowned slightly. And when she does, sir? For a moment, Jae-hyun did not answer. His gaze remained fixed on Naomi below. Finally he said something that made the assistant uneasy. When that moment comes, she will understand why it had to happen. Back in the garden, Naomi stood staring at the mansion. It looked like a puzzle. A puzzle full of hidden pieces. And she had just become the center of it. Naomi took a deep breath. I need answers, she whispered. For the first time since arriving at the mansion, Naomi made a decision. She would stop waiting. She would stop being confused. And she would start searching for the truth herself. And Naomi was determined to uncover it. No matter what it took. That night, the Kwon mansion looked peaceful. Soft lights glowed along the long hallways. Most of the staff had finished their duties for the day. Security guards quietly walked their patrols around the estate. From the outside, everything looked normal. But inside Naomi's mind, nothing felt calm. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor. The doctor's words repeated again and again in her head. You are pregnant. Her heart tightened. No, it still doesn't make sense, she whispered. She placed her hand gently on her stomach. She felt no difference. No change. Just the same body she had always known. Yet somehow, a life was growing inside her. A life she could not explain. Naomi slowly stood up. Her heart was beating faster now. I need to find the truth, she whispered. And she knew exactly where she might start looking. Jae-hyun's private office. The mansion was very quiet as Naomi stepped into the hallway. Most lights had been dimmed for the night. The air felt cool and still. Naomi walked slowly, carefully. She didn't want to attract attention. She had spent the past few days learning the layout of the mansion. She knew where the office was located. Second floor. End of the west hallway. But getting there without being seen would not be easy. 2 security guards usually stood near the staircase. Naomi stopped near the corner and peeked down the hallway. Just like she expected. 2 guards were standing near the stairs, talking quietly. She waited. Minutes passed slowly. Then one guard's phone rang. He stepped away to answer the call. The second guard followed him toward the entrance. Naomi's chance had come. She quickly and quietly moved down the hallway and up the staircase. Her heart was pounding loudly in her chest. Every small sound made her nervous. But she kept going. Soon she reached the second floor. The hallway was dark and silent. At the very end stood a large wooden door. Jae-hyun's office. Naomi approached slowly. She hesitated for a moment. What if I'm wrong, she whispered to herself. But another thought quickly pushed that doubt away. What if I'm right? She took a deep breath. Then she carefully tried the door handle. To her surprise, the door opened. The office was enormous. Soft lights illuminated the elegant room. Large bookshelves covered the walls. Naomi stepped inside slowly. She looked around carefully. Everything looked neat and organized. This was clearly the office of someone who valued control. But Naomi wasn't here to admire the room. She began searching. First, she checked the desk drawers. Inside were business documents and contracts. Nothing unusual. Then she moved to the shelves. Most of the books were about finance, technology, and medicine. But one section caught her attention. A locked cabinet built into the wall. Naomi stared at it. Why would someone lock a cabinet inside their office, she wondered. Her curiosity grew stronger. She gently pulled on the cabinet door. It was firmly locked. But beside the cabinet sat a small electronic keypad. Naomi frowned. A code lock. She sighed quietly. There's no way I can guess that. For a moment she felt frustrated. But then she noticed something else. On the desk nearby sat a thin digital tablet. The screen was still on. Perhaps someone had used it earlier and forgotten to lock it. Naomi walked over slowly. She hesitated again. This felt like crossing a line. But her life was already caught in something mysterious. She had no choice. She picked up the tablet. The screen showed a list of files. Most were business reports. But one folder stood out immediately. Biotech Project, Confidential. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. Biotech? She tapped the folder. Several documents appeared. Research data. Medical reports. Scientific notes. Naomi began scrolling through them slowly. At first, the information looked too complicated. Medical words she did not fully understand. But then she saw something that made her freeze. A document titled Human Fertility Development Program. Her hands began trembling. She opened the file. The document explained research into advanced fertility technology. It talked about creating pregnancy without traditional conception. Using medical procedures and genetic science. Naomi's breathing became shallow. This can't be real. She kept reading. And then she saw something that made her heart stop. A patient file. Her name. Naomi Carter. Her eyes widened in shock. She quickly opened the file. Inside were medical records. Blood tests. Health data. Even photos taken inside the mansion's medical room. But the most shocking part was a single sentence written in the report. Subject successfully implanted during unconscious recovery period. Naomi dropped the tablet onto the desk. Her body felt cold. No. Her voice shook. No, this isn't possible. But the evidence was right in front of her. When she collapsed on the street. When she was unconscious in the medical room. Someone had performed a secret medical procedure on her. Someone had placed a pregnancy inside her body. Without her permission. Without her knowledge. Without her consent. Tears filled Naomi's eyes. She stepped backward slowly. That means. Her voice trembled. They used me. Anger began rising deep inside her chest. Not just anger. Betrayal. She remembered the moment Jae-hyun found her on the street. His calm expression. His strange kindness. Bringing her to the mansion. Letting her stay. Now it all looked different. None of it had been kindness. It had been part of a plan. Naomi clenched her fists. He turned me into an experiment. The pain in her chest turned into something stronger. At that moment, Naomi made a silent promise to herself. If he thinks he can control my life, he's wrong. Her eyes hardened with determination. I will destroy everything he built. But just as Naomi turned to leave the office, a voice suddenly spoke from the doorway. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Naomi froze. Slowly, she turned around. Standing in the doorway was Kwon Jae-hyun. He had been there long enough to see everything. And now, the truth between them could no longer be hidden. The room felt suddenly smaller. Naomi stood frozen beside the desk, her heart pounding loudly in her chest. In the doorway stood Kwon Jae-hyun. His expression was calm. The same cold control he always showed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tablet still lay on the desk, its screen glowing softly with the documents Naomi had just read. Proof that her life had been turned upside down without her permission. Naomi slowly clenched her fists. Her voice trembled slightly when she spoke. You did this. Jae-hyun stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. Yes, he said quietly. No denial. No excuse. Just one simple word. Naomi felt anger rush through her body like fire. You used me, she shouted. Her voice echoed through the office. You took my body, my life, and turned it into an experiment. Jae-hyun walked calmly toward the desk. His face showed no fear. No guilt. He simply looked at her. You collapsed on the street, he said. That gave you no right to do this to me. Naomi snapped. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of weakness. They were tears of betrayal. You made me pregnant without even asking me. Jae-hyun remained silent for a moment. Then he spoke again. You were the best candidate. Naomi stared at him in disbelief. The best, what? Candidate. His voice sounded like he was explaining a simple business decision. The procedure requires a healthy body and strong genetics. Your medical records showed excellent compatibility. Naomi shook her head slowly. She could not believe what she was hearing. You're talking about my life like it's a business project. Jae-hyun's expression did not change. In many ways, it is. Naomi slammed her hand against the desk. I am not a project. Her voice cracked with emotion. For the first time, Jae-hyun's eyes softened slightly. But only for a brief moment. You were dying on that street, he said quietly. Naomi froze. What? You were extremely weak, he continued. No money. No home. No future in this country. That still doesn't give you the right to control my body, she shouted. Jae-hyun looked directly into her eyes. I saved your life. Naomi laughed bitterly. Saved me? You call this saving me? She placed her hand on her stomach. You forced a child into my body. Jae-hyun walked slowly toward the window. Then he spoke again. This child is important. Naomi felt her anger grow even stronger. Important to who? To the future. Naomi shook her head again. You sound insane. Jae-hyun turned back toward her. For years, my companies have invested in advanced medical research, he explained. Research that could change how families are created. Naomi crossed her arms. You mean controlling people? No, he replied calmly. Helping people who cannot have children. Naomi frowned. That still doesn't explain why you used me. Jae-hyun hesitated slightly. Then he said something unexpected. You were not random. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Jae-hyun walked back to the desk. He picked up the tablet and opened another file. Then he turned the screen toward her. Look. Naomi stepped closer and stared at the screen. The file showed information about her past. Her family history. Her medical records. Even details about her parents. How did you get all this? She asked. My company researches genetic health, Jae-hyun replied. Naomi kept reading. Then she noticed something unusual. A note near the bottom of the document. Rare genetic compatibility detected. Naomi looked up. What does this mean? Jae-hyun answered slowly. Your genetics contain a rare combination that makes successful artificial pregnancy extremely likely. Naomi felt the room spin slightly. So you were looking for someone like me? Yes. And when you found me, you just decided to take my body? Jae-hyun did not answer immediately. Finally, he said quietly. I made a decision. Naomi stared at him with disbelief. You ruined my life for your research. But Jae-hyun shook his head. No. He pointed toward her stomach. I gave you something powerful. Naomi's voice became cold. You gave me a reason to hate you. Silence filled the office again. The tension between them felt heavy. Jae-hyun looked at Naomi carefully. You will be safe here. Naomi laughed again, but there was no humor in it. Safe? You think I feel safe in a house where someone secretly performed surgery on me? Jae-hyun did not respond. Naomi's voice grew stronger. You treated me like I had no choice. Her eyes burned with determination. But you were wrong. Jae-hyun frowned slightly. What do you mean? Naomi looked directly at him. You may control this mansion. You may control your companies. But you do not control me. Jae-hyun studied her expression carefully. For the first time, he saw something he had not expected. Strength. The same strength he had noticed when she collapsed on the street. But now it was different. Now it was focused. Naomi took a step closer to him. You made a big mistake, she said quietly. Jae-hyun raised an eyebrow. And what mistake is that? You underestimated me. Jae-hyun crossed his arms. You believe you can fight me? Naomi didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked slowly toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back and looked at him one last time. I don't just plan to fight you, she said. I plan to expose everything you did. Jae-hyun watched her silently. Then he asked one final question. And if you fail? Naomi's eyes became sharp. I won't. With that, she opened the door and walked out. The sound of the door closing echoed softly through the office. Jae-hyun remained standing near the desk. For the first time that night, his calm expression changed slightly. Because Naomi Carter was not reacting the way he expected. Most people would have broken under the weight of such a discovery. But she had done the opposite. She had become stronger. And deep down, Jae-hyun realized something important. The woman he had chosen for his experiment was far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Down the hallway, Naomi walked quickly toward her room. They think I'm powerless, she whispered. But they're wrong. She looked toward the dark windows of the mansion. This giant house full of secrets. This place where her life had been changed without her permission. If they want a fight. Her voice became steady. They're going to get one. But Naomi knew something important. She could not fight Jae-hyun alone. He had money. Influence. If she wanted revenge, she would need allies. And somewhere inside this mansion, there were people who were also afraid of the billionaire. People who might be willing to help her. Naomi's eyes slowly hardened. Her battle had just begun. And the first step toward revenge would begin in the shadows. She lay awake in her room, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed everything that had happened in Jae-hyun's office. Like she was nothing more than data in a research project. Naomi slowly placed her hand on her stomach. Tears filled her eyes again. But this time, they were not tears of helplessness. They were tears of anger. He thinks I'm weak, she whispered. But he's wrong. Naomi sat up slowly. She had already made a promise to herself. She would expose him. She would make the world see what he had done. His security team protected every corner of the estate. His influence reached deep into politics and business. One person could not defeat a man like that. But maybe a group could. Naomi's mind returned to something she had noticed over the past few days. Not everyone in the mansion admired Jae-hyun. Some of the staff looked afraid of him. Some of them whispered behind his back. And one person in particular had caught her attention. A quiet housemaid named Soo-min. Soo-min was different from the other workers. She was polite but distant. She rarely joined the gossip in the kitchen. And whenever the staff spoke about the boss, Soo-min always became quiet. Almost uncomfortable. Naomi had noticed it several times. And tonight, Naomi decided to trust her instinct. The next morning, Naomi walked into the mansion kitchen earlier than usual. The kitchen was already busy. The room filled with the smell of soup, rice, and fresh vegetables. But Naomi was not there for food. Her eyes searched the room carefully. She saw Soo-min standing near a table cutting vegetables. Naomi walked toward her. Soo-min. The young woman looked up. Her eyes widened slightly. Miss Naomi. Can we talk? Soo-min looked nervous. About what? Naomi glanced around the room. Too many people were nearby. Somewhere private, she said quietly. Soo-min hesitated. But something in Naomi's voice made her curious. All right, she whispered. A few minutes later, the two women stood in a quiet storage room behind the kitchen. Soo-min crossed her arms nervously. What is this about? Naomi took a deep breath. I know the truth. Soo-min frowned. What truth? Naomi looked directly into her eyes. The experiments. For a moment, Soo-min froze. Her face lost color. I don't know what you mean. Naomi stepped closer. You do. Soo-min shook her head quickly. You should not talk about things like that. I saw the files in his office, Naomi continued. Soo-min's breathing became uneven. That's dangerous, she whispered. Why? Because if he finds out. He already knows, Naomi interrupted. Soo-min stared at her in shock. You told him? No, Naomi replied. He caught me reading them. Soo-min looked terrified now. You shouldn't have done that. Naomi's voice became firm. He secretly used my body for an experiment. Soo-min looked down at the floor. I know. Naomi blinked in surprise. You knew. Soo-min nodded slowly. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I work in the medical wing sometimes. Naomi felt anger rise again. And you didn't stop it? Sumin's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't. Why not? Because people who question Mr. Kwon lose their jobs, or worse. Naomi remained silent. Sumin continued quietly. He controls everything here. Her hands trembled slightly. You don't understand how powerful he is. I understand enough. Sumin looked at her again. What are you planning to do? Naomi answered without hesitation. I'm going to expose him. The room became silent. Sumin stared at her like she had just heard something impossible. Expose him? Yes. That's suicide, Sumin whispered. No, Naomi replied calmly. It's justice. Sumin shook her head. You don't know how many people depend on his companies. Then they deserve to know the truth, Naomi said firmly. Sumin looked conflicted. For years she had watched the strange things happening inside the mansion. Medical deliveries at night. Doctors who stayed for months and then disappeared. She had always been afraid to ask questions. But Naomi was different. Naomi was brave enough to confront the truth. Finally, Sumin asked quietly. What do you need from me? Help. Sumin looked nervous again. What kind of help? Information. Naomi leaned closer. You've worked here longer than I have. You know things about the mansion. Sumin hesitated. Then she slowly nodded. Yes. Naomi spoke carefully. I need evidence. Anything that proves his experiments exist. Sumin looked toward the door as if someone might hear them. Then she whispered. There are files in the research laboratory. Naomi's eyes widened. Inside the mansion? Sumin nodded. Yes. But it's restricted. Only doctors and senior staff can enter. Naomi thought for a moment. Then a small smile appeared on her face. Then we'll find a way in. Sumin looked shocked. You're serious? Yes. Sumin took a deep breath. Her life had been quiet and simple before Naomi arrived. But now everything was changing. Still. Part of her felt something she had not felt in years. Hope that the truth might finally come out. I'll help you, Sumin said quietly. Naomi smiled slightly. Thank you. But neither of them noticed something important. Outside the storage room door. Someone had just walked past. Someone who heard part of their conversation. And that person quickly disappeared down the hallway. Naomi had realized something important after her confrontation with Jae-hyun. Fighting him openly would not work. And to get proof, she had to make Jae-hyun believe one thing. That she had stopped fighting him. One evening, Naomi stood outside Jae-hyun's office door. She took a deep breath. Then she knocked. Come in, his calm voice answered. Naomi opened the door. Jae-hyun sat behind his large wooden desk, reading documents. When he looked up and saw her, his expression did not change. Miss Carter, he said calmly. Naomi stepped inside. We need to talk. Jae-hyun closed the file in front of him. About what? She lowered her eyes. I've been thinking. Jae-hyun watched her carefully. And? I can't change what has already happened. The billionaire remained silent. Naomi continued. I was angry. That's understandable, he replied. She looked at him again. But anger won't help me now. Jae-hyun leaned back in his chair slightly. What are you saying? Naomi took a slow breath. I'm saying, maybe we should stop fighting. The room became quiet. Jae-hyun studied her face carefully. He was a man who trusted logic more than emotions. And right now, Naomi's calm voice sounded logical. You are accepting the situation?" he asked. Naomi nodded slowly. "What choice do I have?" Jae-hyun's eyes narrowed slightly. "You had many strong opinions the last time we spoke." Naomi looked down again. "That was before I realized something." "And what did you realize?" Naomi gently placed her hand on her stomach. "There's a child involved now." Her voice softened. "I can't spend the next months filled with anger." Jae-hyun watched her silently. Naomi continued speaking. "You said this child is important." "Yes." "And you said I would be safe here." "Yes." Naomi looked up again. "Then maybe we should focus on the future instead of the past." For several seconds, Jae-hyun said nothing. His sharp mind was analyzing every word she said. But nothing in her expression showed rebellion. She looked calm. Finally, he nodded. That would be the most practical approach. Naomi gave a small, quiet smile. Good. But deep inside Naomi's mind, a different thought echoed. He believes me. And that was exactly what she wanted. Later that night, Naomi quietly returned to her room. But she did not stay there long. She slipped out into the hallway and walked toward the servants' wing. Soo-min was waiting in the laundry room. The moment Naomi entered, Soo-min looked anxious. "What happened?" she asked. "He believes I've given up." Soo-min's eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes." Naomi crossed her arms. "And that means he'll stop watching me closely." Soo-min nodded slowly. "That gives us time." Naomi stepped closer. "Tell me more about the laboratory." Soo-min lowered her voice. "It's located in the lower level of the mansion. Below the medical wing. Security cameras watch the entrance." Naomi listened carefully. "Is there any time when the area is empty?" Soo-min thought for a moment. "Late at night. The doctors leave around midnight." Naomi nodded. "Perfect." Soo-min looked nervous. "What exactly are we looking for?" "Evidence," Naomi replied. "Documents, research files, anything proving the experiments." Soo-min swallowed. "If we get caught." "We won't," Naomi said calmly. Soo-min wished she had Naomi's confidence. Because what they were planning could destroy their lives. But at the same time, it could also expose the truth. Over the next few days, Naomi continued acting like everything was normal. She even began speaking with Jae-hyun more often. They sometimes met during dinner. Their conversations were calm. Almost friendly. But behind those calm conversations, Naomi was studying him carefully. 2 nights later, the moment finally came. The mansion was dark and quiet. Most of the staff were asleep. Security guards slowly walked their usual routes. Her heart was beating fast. But her mind remained calm. Tonight was important. Tonight they will enter the laboratory. She slipped into the hallway. Soo-min was already waiting near the staircase. "You're sure about this?" Soo-min whispered nervously. Naomi nodded. "Yes." They walked quietly through the mansion. Every step felt louder than usual. Every shadow felt like someone watching them. But they continued moving. Soon they reached the medical wing. At the end of the hallway stood a heavy security door. Behind it, Soo-min looked at Naomi. "This is it." Naomi stared at the door. The place where the experiment had happened. The place where her life had changed. Her voice became firm. "Let's find the truth." Soo-min slowly entered the security code she had memorized during her cleaning shifts. The keypad beeped softly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door clicked open. Naomi took a deep breath. The truth was waiting on the other side. But neither of them noticed something else happening inside the mansion. High above them, inside his office, Jae-hyun stood near the window. One of his assistants spoke quietly. "Sir, security cameras show movement near the laboratory." Jae-hyun looked at the monitor screen. Two figures walking down the hallway. Naomi and Soo-min. For a moment, the billionaire said nothing. Then a faint, mysterious smile appeared on his face. "Interesting," he murmured. Because the trap Naomi believed she was setting might not be the only trap in the mansion. The large ballroom inside the Kwon mansion sparkled with light. Elegant music floated through the air. Dozens of powerful guests moved around the room, talking and laughing softly. Business leaders, politicians, famous investors. Even a few reporters had been invited. Tonight was an important night. Kwon Jae-hyun was hosting one of his biggest charity galas of the year. The event was meant to celebrate his company's donations to medical research and community development. Everyone in the room admired him. To the public, he was a brilliant businessman. A man who supported science and progress. A man who helped people. But one person in the mansion knew a different truth. Naomi Carter. Upstairs in her room, Naomi stood in front of the mirror. She wore a beautiful dark blue evening dress that one of the maids had brought earlier. Her hair fell softly over her shoulders. From the outside, she looked calm and elegant. But inside, her heart was beating fast. A soft knock came at the door. Naomi opened it. Soo-min stood outside, looking nervous. "Are you ready?" Soo-min whispered. Naomi nodded. "Yes." Soo-min stepped inside and closed the door quickly. "Everything is prepared," she said. Naomi's eyes sharpened. "Good." 3 nights earlier, Naomi and Soo-min had successfully entered the secret laboratory. What they found inside had been even worse than Naomi imagined. Rows of confidential research files. Video recordings of experiments. Detailed reports showing that Naomi was not the first person used in the fertility project. But she was the most successful case. Soo-min had secretly copied all the files onto a small flash drive. Now that flash drive sat inside Naomi's small purse. The evidence that could destroy one of the most powerful men in South Korea. Soo-min looked worried. "If we do this, there's no going back." Naomi placed a calm hand on her shoulder. "I know. But the truth deserves to be seen." Soo-min nodded slowly. She admired Naomi's courage. But she was still afraid. Downstairs, hundreds of important people were gathered. And the man they were about to expose controlled an empire. Naomi took a deep breath. "Let's go." The ballroom doors opened slowly as Naomi entered. Conversations paused for a moment. Many guests turned to look at her. Some recognized her from seeing her around the mansion. Others simply noticed the confident woman walking through the elegant room. But one person noticed her immediately. Kwon Jae-hyun. He stood near the stage, speaking with several important guests. When he saw Naomi, his expression changed slightly. Not surprise. More like curiosity. Naomi walked toward him calmly. Soo-min remained quietly near the back of the room. Everything was moving exactly as planned. Jae-hyun greeted Naomi politely. "You look well tonight," he said. Naomi smiled softly. "Thank you. You decided to join the event?" "Yes." Jae-hyun studied her carefully. "Are you comfortable being here?" Naomi nodded. Jae-hyun gestured toward the crowd. "These people support my work." Naomi glanced around the room. "Yes. And they deserve to know the truth about it." Jae-hyun's eyes narrowed slightly. But before he could respond, the event host stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced. Please welcome our host for the evening, Mr. Kwon Jae-hyun. Applause filled the room. Jae-hyun walked toward the stage with his usual calm confidence. Naomi watched him carefully. This was the moment. Jae-hyun began speaking to the guests. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," he said. "My companies believe strongly in the power of medical innovation." Guests nodded and listened respectfully. But Naomi was already moving. She slipped toward the technical control area beside the stage. A young technician stood there managing the large display screens used for presentations. Naomi approached him calmly. "Excuse me," she said politely. "Yes," the technician asked. "Mr. Kwon asked me to add a special video for tonight's presentation." The technician looked confused. "I wasn't told about that." Naomi gave a confident smile. He wanted it to be a surprise. She handed him the flash drive. "Just play the file when I give the signal." The technician hesitated. But Naomi's calm confidence convinced him. "All right." Naomi walked back toward the crowd. On stage, Jae-hyun was finishing his speech. "Our goal is to create a future where science helps humanity grow stronger." More applause filled the room. But Naomi's voice suddenly spoke loudly. "Then maybe you should show them how your science really works." The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward her. Jae-hyun looked down from the stage. His expression remained calm. But his eyes had become sharper. "Miss Carter," he said slowly. Naomi stepped forward. "Yes, Mr. Kwon. Is something wrong?" Naomi looked around the room. At the powerful guests. At the reporters holding cameras. Then she spoke clearly. "I think your guests deserve to see the truth." Jae-hyun did not move. "What truth?" Naomi raised her hand toward the technician. "Play the video." The large screen behind the stage flickered to life. At first, guests looked confused. Then the video began. Footage from the secret laboratory. Doctors discussing experimental procedures. Documents explaining the fertility project. Medical reports showing unauthorized procedures. And finally, Naomi's own medical file. The words, "subject implanted during unconscious recovery period," appeared on the screen. Gasps filled the ballroom. Guests whispered in shock. Reporters quickly raised their cameras. Jae-hyun stood still on the stage. His empire was being exposed in front of everyone. Naomi's voice rang through the room. "This man secretly used my body for an experiment without my consent." The crowd erupted into shocked murmurs. A reporter shouted, "Is this true, Mr. Kwon?" Another voice followed. "Were there other subjects?" Jae-hyun's expression remained calm. But the perfect image he had built for years was cracking. Naomi stepped closer to the stage. "You believed he was helping people. But the truth is, he treated human lives like research projects." More reporters began recording. Security guards looked confused about what to do. And for the first time that night, Kwon Jae-hyun had no control over the situation. Naomi looked directly at him. "You thought I was powerless." The room remained silent as everyone waited. But tonight, her eyes burned with determination. The world knows the truth. The powerful billionaire stood under the bright lights of the ballroom stage. His empire was crumbling in front of hundreds of witnesses. And the woman he once believed he could control had just turned his own stage into the place of his downfall. The story highlights how powerful scientific technology can be misused if ethics are ignored. While scientific research can help humanity, it must always follow strict ethical standards and respect human dignity. This teaches viewers that progress in science must be balanced with responsibility and morality. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe and comment what you think about this story.